We spent the first 3 parts of this series looking at the legal battle, the $9 billion fraud, and the engineered chaos on the streets. But today, we have to talk about the reality that the political pundits often skip over, the human cost. When the rule of law breaks down and chaos becomes a tactical tool, real people get caught in the crossfire. Today, we're finding our focus on the tragic deaths of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. We're going to look past the activist narratives and the government press releases to see the truth that often falls into the blind spot of a polarized nation. Welcome to the Blind Spot. I'm Lydia. On January 7th, 2026, the situation in Minneapolis turned lethal when Renee Good was shot by a federal agent. Just over 2 weeks later, on January 24th, Alex Preddy, a VA nurse, was also killed in a confrontation with federal authorities. Now, from a place of compassion, let me say this. Every loss of life is a tragedy. These were individuals with families, careers, and lives. But as we look at these incidents, we must also be grounded in the reality of the situation. These tragedies occurred in the middle of high-stakes federal operations. Situations where tensions were at a boiling point and the federal agents were already being targeted by the rapid response agitators we discussed in Part 3. When individuals choose to insert themselves into active federal scenes, whether to observe or to protest, they are entering a high-risk environment. Sovereignty and the First Amendment give us the right to speak, but they do not grant us immunity from the physical realities of a law enforcement perimeter. It's a harsh truth, but a necessary one. When you impede federal officials during a surge, you are taking your life into your own hands. We can mourn the loss of life while still pointing out that accountability starts with the choices we make. To make matters worse, the groups fueling this chaos are using these tragedies to spread outright lies. You've likely seen the viral posts claiming that the federal government is systematically detaining children as part of Operation Metro Surge. This is a classic blind spot tactic, using a seedling of the truth to create a forest of misinformation. Let's bring this into focus. There was a widely publicized incident where a 5-year-old was seen being held by agents. However, the context that was accidentally left out was that the child's guardian had just been arrested for a significant felony charge, and no other family member was present. Federal agents were waiting for Child Protective Services to arrive. They weren't detaining a child. They were securing a minor in a dangerous environment. But the agitators don't want you to know that. They want you to stay in the blind spot of emotional outrage so you don't ask about the $9 billion in fraud that necessitated the agent's presence in the first place. We also have to ask a darker question. Are these protesters being put in harm's way on purpose? If, as we discussed in Part 3, there are professional organizers behind these riots, they know that a tragic death is the ultimate fuel for their cause. By encouraging civilians like Preddy and Good to get close to federal agents, these organizers are creating the very tragedies they then use to fundraise. As a community, We need to be finding our focus on the people behind the protesters, the ones who stay safe in the back while others pay the price. We've looked at the legal, the financial, and the physical costs. But underneath all of this is a moral crisis. How did we get to a place where we value the narrative more than the truth? In our final segment, Part 5, we're going to look at this through a Christian lens to find the spiritual foundation we need to move forward. Thank you for watching Part 4 of this series. Links for Part 1 through 3 are in the description. Subscribe or follow to be notified when Part 5 is published. And remember, keep searching to find your focus.